So as Jimmy said, I am from Canberra, Australia. And so being from Canberra, a lot of designers work in government, in federal government. And so for 12 years of my career, that's where I started. And so working in government usually meant really, really long processes. 6 months, 12 months, user research, interviewing, planning, workshopping, analysing, actually discovering all of that, and that's even before we started to do any creative thinking. And so when I moved about 12 months ago, I took my big leap of faith and I moved to the private sector and became a consultant in design. And so in doing that, what I realised is that I needed to figure out how can I actually sell my design wares to clients without actually having to take 12 months plus of a process and be able to go through that. So what I did was I started to look up different ways of people doing design. I wasn't really looking to figure out how to do design. I just wanted to take what I already knew from design and figure out how I could do it in a shorter period of time. I was talking to someone a couple of months ago about the talk that I was pulling together for this conference and mentioned that I was talking about design sprints. And so they said to me, "Oh, I've read the book." And I went, "Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. This one." So this is the sprint book. This is from Google Ventures, and this is something that I kind of carried around as a bit of a Bible for the first couple of months when I joined private, and I started to look at the way of doing design sprints. And so what I wanted to do was come up with something that wasn't just taking this book and the process that it has, but adopting it for the way that I do design. And so before I go into what my process is, and that's what I want to share with you today, I want to kind of tell you about what a design sprint is. So design sprint is from Agile methodology, and it's about taking something, coming up with an idea, testing and learning it in a really fast process. That's kind of my interpretation of it. Rather than going through a full build and launching it, you actually want to come up with really quick ideas after doing some initial discovery, being able to prototype and test all within about 5 days. And so this is the process that I've come up with. This is something that I've iterated and I've used over and over, and it's something that I like to share with you today. And the best possible way that I could share that with you is take you through a bit of an example design sprint. So 5 stages we've got up here: absorb, target, ideate, propose, and prove. So let's start with a business problem. Local primary school is having difficulty collecting their school fees on time. Really simple problem, and something that I'm hoping we can share with you. But before you go into a design sprint, or at least the first time I went into a design sprint, I was really nervous and I started to think, oh my gosh, how do I avoid falling over before I even start doing it? And so the biggest thing that I realised is planning. It's absolutely essential. And so I have 3 really big tips that I go through in terms of how I go about planning and what's really important to me. And the first one is choosing the right problem. Choosing the right problem, as we've heard a little bit already today, is so important that everyone understands what that problem is. But there's 2 parts of it. One is, are people actually negatively emotional about this problem? Do they care? Is this something that the people involved in your sprint, your team, are going to care about and are going to want to help you solve and are going to want to turn up to your design sprints to actually help fix? And what about the people that are actually using this product or service, the users? Do they care about it? Are they currently experiencing negative emotions or not? And the second part of choosing the right problem is this a priority for the organisation to solve? So part of that I like to think of is, if we take our school example, imagine if the school organisation was about to shut your school down. Why would we even go about trying to figure out how to collect fees in the future if the school isn't even going to exist? So if you think about that for larger organisations, there's certain pockets of our areas, of our departments that we design within. But if they have a different strategy in place, that this isn't actually a problem to the organisation, then we don't want to do a sprint about it. The second part of it is logistics. Organising logistics is so important to do right up front, and it needs to actually take some time. We need to make sure we've got the right space and the right resources in order to do that. And we heard a little bit about a war room just before, and it's so important that you've got a physical space around you for your sprint team to be able to come together and share. You are stuck in a room for 5 days with these people, and so you want to make sure you've actually got the right design space to do that. And thirdly, and I was going to say most important, but just as important, is obtaining the right team. And so for me, the right team includes designers, experts, and owners. So you've got to have, obviously, people like yourselves that are actually there to facilitate and lead the process and understand the design sprint process to do it. You want to have an owner. It doesn't make sense to actually go through a design sprint, come up with an outcome, hand it over to the owner, and then go, no, I don't like that. So you've actually got to have the owner as part of your team there. And thirdly, you've got to have experts in the room. So a lot of design processes that I've been involved in the past has given me access to subject matter experts and to real users. But in a design sprint, this is really limited because you have such a short period of time to do it. So what you want to do is figure out what are the main areas that I need to have people experts in. So I want to have subject matter experts of the type of business that we're working in, as well as experts on users, whether that be an experience manager or whether it be actual users themselves or your user researcher that's done research in the past. Actually having them all together. They need to have commitment to the process. 5 days is a long time for someone to actually give up their work, walk into the room and trust in your process. And so to have someone that comes in and goes, oh, my manager sent me in to do this, it's not the sort of person that you want there. You need to have people that are going to turn up. And you also want people that are creative and enthusiastic. A design sprint can be exhausting. It's 5 days, and it's nothing else but going through this process that they probably haven't actually gone through before. So you want to make sure that they are excited to be there for you. So we've got our problem, we've got our design space, and we've got the right team. So next, what we want to do is actually figure out how are we going to conduct this. And so I shared with you my process before, but what I'd like to share with you is it's not as simple as being 5 days and 5 phases. I actually run it this way, in which I have my first 2 phases in the first day, and my proposed phase takes longer. You might come up with something different, but this is the ideal way that I kind of find that we can get through the full 5 days in what's needed to be done. So now that we've got our process, then you kind of walk into it thinking, gosh, how do I make sure I don't trip over halfway through? So this is about taking you through kind of the tools and tips, techniques and tricks that I use to get through my design sprint. So the first phase of it is absorb. So let's absorb an understanding of the problem. This is about coming up with the full current experience, and we're talking about doing this in half a day. So what we want to understand is from our subject matter experts and our user advocates that are within our team, what do we already know about this problem? What are people currently experiencing? And what have we tried to do so far already? Has the organisation already tried to figure out how to get billing, how to get payments from parents? And what have they done so far? And has it worked? If it hasn't worked, we don't even want to attempt that again, because what's the point? We want to map it visually. We've seen some great examples of visual maps so far. And this is something that's really important to make sure that everyone has a proper understanding of what that current experience is and doesn't walk into the sprint with major assumptions. And we want to talk to the experts. So I talked to you about having the right subject matter experts in your team, but we're talking about small teams here, 6 to 8 people max. And so there's usually many, many more people available that you want to be able to absorb information from. And so I like to set up really, really quick kind of 15, 30-minute interviews for your whole team, invite them into your war room, have your whole team there asking questions and absorb that information to map out as well. So once we've absorbed all our information, we need to kind of figure out what are we targeting. What are we actually going to solve within this process? So what we want to do is look at our current experience, and we're going to turn all of the pains into opportunities. And the way I like to do this best is using how might we statements, if anyone's used those so far. So we look at all the different pains and we come up with how might we be able to overcome this by making a change. And so if we think back on our example problem, which is how do we help the school actually get payments made on time? I've got 3 examples of how might we statements. Example, so one of the pains might be that payees can't afford the fees being charged by the school. So how might we reduce fees to an affordable amount? Another pain is payees are frustrated when they request a payment, but their bank is the one that's actually delaying it from being made. It's not their fault. So how might we assist banks to deliver a faster payment service? And the third one is that actually the letters are going to the students and they're the ones that are losing it, and so then parents aren't even finding out about the fees that are due. So how might we inform the right people of the school fees in a timely manner? So once we've got these how might we statements, we want to analyse them and make sure that we're looking at the right opportunity, and we want to target in on which how might we statement do we think that we can solve. And this is making sure that we are keeping it in scope. So it's not something that can't be achieved within your 5-day sprint. It's got to be something that matters and is going to solve the problem and is achievable. And ideally, it's something that's going to benefit your users and your business. So if we look at the 3 examples we had, so how might we reduce fees to an affordable amount? We might go up to our product owner and say, oh, okay, so can we just hike up the fees? Lower the fees. That seems like a really solvable solution there. But they're going to go, no, because if we have to do that, we have to cut our art department or something like that. So that actually might be unachievable. The second one is, can we assist banks to deliver a better payment service? Well, banks aren't even in the room. They're not our client. So they're completely out of scope. We can't achieve that. So the third one is, can we figure out how might we inform the right people of what the school fees are in a timely manner? Is it achievable? Well, yeah. Is it within scope of what we're trying to do? Yes. And does it benefit both the users and the business? Yes. So that's going to be our target. So we've got our target there. And now we're getting the fun side of it, I think, and we get to ideate. This is where we're going to have real creative thinking and start to look at the different ways that we can do it. So the first stage that we do is when we get into ideation, we've walked into the room for the second day and we think, oh gosh, I've never actually done this sort of thing before. I haven't looked at payment services. I know the process, but I wouldn't even know what best practice is or where to start with what a solution could look like. So we can do what we call lightning demos. And lightning demos are, it's a process where your sprint team can set out by themselves, pick up their phone, pick up their iPad, and start to look at other solutions around. So we've got some solutions kind of just flashed up on the screen that other businesses have used in the past. So there's apps out there that people use to be able to send notifications to parents to remind them that fees are due. There's invoices that could be sent at a different time rather than waiting a month or 2 in. And then there's simple things like this, where it's kind of a cute message that goes out. And for parents, they look at that and go, oh, look at the photo. And then there's a nice big kind of statement there as well saying, pay your fees. So we kind of want to start to get some real inspiration from the different ideas that are out there at the moment. And then we start to get creative. And we look at all the different ways in which we might be able to do this. And we're talking lots and lots of different ways. So each person wants to start to come up with what pops into my head when I think about how to improve, how might we get the right information to people in a more timely manner. And there's different ways that we can do this. I'm sure that you've all got different tools in your toolkit, but some of mine, sketching. So having a really good sketch, every single person taking a piece of paper themselves and starting to put it down in front of them. And this is really important, that everyone has a go individually first, so that you don't start to get too much groupthink happening. We want to make sure that people are coming up with their own ideas and not just hearing the first thing and running with that. So sketching is a great way, and people don't feel that intimidated by doing it. Moulding, Jimmy mentioned, my kids love Lego. I literally use Lego in all my workshops because we have so much of it, but also because it's a great tool that gets people thinking creatively with their hands and they start to mould things together. And then the other one is kind of the old trusty design tool as Post-its. And so this is a really great tool for creative thinking. Because they're so small, it's about putting a small amount on the wall and onto the next idea and keep creating new ways of doing it. So once we've got a lot of different ideas, everyone in our sprint team has come up with 1, 2, 5 and lots more ideas. We want to start to blend those to come up with a real solution now. And so this is where we start to look at all the different things that have come together. So let's say, for example, our sprint team has come up with some ideas that include notifications of parents via an app, providing content of costs really upfront on registration of the school, and then also actually giving active reminders before the due date so that we're not lapsing past that. And so they're all really good ideas, but they don't stand alone. We might be able to blend those together. So if we blended that to an idea of actually saying, what if we created an app or used something on the market, we sent it out via a link to parents on registration, so they have it up front. It's not going via the students anymore, and it provides information on costs. And we can also push some information to them if we think that their bill is starting to be due and hasn't been paid. So this is a blended solution that your whole team can create and actually agree on doing, that takes lots of different parts of their ideas together. So we get to this great blended solution, and now what we want to do is propose it. And so we need to think it through. We can't just take a solution to a how might we and think, right, let's just do that. We actually need to think it right through, and so we need to storyboard it. And storyboarding is really important, that you look at a complete experience, not just an app. I don't know if you've ever been to a client where they've gone, make an app for me. And you think, oh gosh, okay, let's go right back to the start. And that's what we want to make sure, that as designers, we don't fall into that same trap. We want to make sure that we are understanding the full experience. How are they going to get the app? What processes does the school need to come up with now that they're going to have this? What happens? How do they contact us? So lots of different areas as to how the touch points might be. So the storyboard needs to make sure we look at the entire scope of the solution. As I said, the experience, not just the product. The end-to-end story of how all the users are going to take part of it. And especially you have to think about at this point, which part of this story are we going to prototype? Because a design sprint is all about testing a real solution with real people. And so we want to make sure that we're not trying to prototype a whole process. We're not trying to prototype from how would we develop the app and then over to how is the business going to send it out. There's not enough time for it. So we need to figure out which is the crucial step that is going to influence our original business problem and our how might we statement opportunity and how we're going to solve that. So then we have to prototype. And so again, there's lots of different ways to prototyping this. And we heard from the previous speaker a little bit about things like Azure and Sketch. And so the other thing to keep in mind for a design sprint is it has to be fast. It has to be really accessible. So a couple of examples of being able to prototype for here is simply just sketching it out again. It's very possible to take such a low fidelity sketch and take it to real people and ask them if they would use something like this. But taking it up a step, you might be able to use an app like Pop or Sketch, where you can take a paper prototype and develop it into something that's clickable, so that real people can then look at it, use it, and tell them whether that's actually going to work for them or not. But what if it's not a product? So how do we actually prototype an experience or a service? Well, I like to use Lego. So this is about actually moulding different parts of your service and having the users take the minifigure that you've all got in your bags, and actually walking through the service and explaining to you as they go how would they interact with that part of the service. What would they say here? Where would they go to next? And so lots of different ways to do it. But before you get into actually going to that next stage of proving it, now that we have our prototype, it's really essential to practice, practice, practice. And a big reason for this is because your sprint team, they're made up of subject matter experts and user advocates, and they probably haven't actually done user testing before. And so understanding the sorts of questions and the sorts of process and actually giving them some training and giving them an opportunity in a safe environment within your team to practice on what that process of testing is, it's really important to do. And so keep doing that over and over again, because we're now moving on to our final stage, which is proving. And so proving is where every single person in your sprint team, the way I certainly do it, is every person has a copy of the prototype. Every person has a copy of the questions. And so every person individually goes out and tests on real people, which is why it's really important that we actually practice that and not just rely on a user researcher or a designer in the team to do it. Now, what I haven't mentioned is, how do we recruit people in a 5-day sprint process? So there's kind of 2 big ways that I would do this, or have done this in the past. One is way back at the end of day 1, at the end of our target. Sometimes we can already identify who our main users are. And so for this example, we probably could. We knew that we were targeting on people that actually pay school fees, parents and carers and the like. So we could have actually undertaken a recruitment process. And we've heard a few different ways through the conference so far on how do we actually go about recruiting: email, local networks, phone calls. But let's say for this process that we didn't actually know who our users were going to be at that point, and it wasn't until we started prototyping that we realised who they were. So guerrilla testing is really the way to go for a design sprint. And so that means taking to the streets, or in this case, you're probably just taking to the school. Take to the schoolyards. Ask the parents at the time, hey, do you mind just talking to me for 5 minutes, and going through the process with them, either at school drop-off or school pickup. So the concept here is that you want to be able to do a number of different processes and iterations. So each person in your team takes their prototype, their question, they hit up a bunch of people, ask them the questions, and then they bring it back, share and learn it all together. And then you can actually iterate the prototype and repeat and repeat and repeat, as long as you actually have time to be able to do, or at least until you start to get trends of that feedback to say, yes, this is actually going to work. Or you're actually realising this isn't working. And so we need to stop our investment, bite the bullet, and go back to the start again. So these are some of the things that we're trying to look at when we're doing our testing. So how do our users interact with it? Does the product actually do what we intended it to do? Does it meet their needs rather than just the school's needs? And is the solution natural for them? How many parents use apps? How many parents would be comfortable actually downloading an app that the school would send them? What changes? So this is where we can get to iteration. Does it work for them? Yeah, okay. But how could we improve it? What changes could we do to keep pushing the limits? And most importantly, does this solution actually solve our business problem that we first started off with? So we've gone out and proved, and we're coming right to the final stage, and we're thinking, oh gosh, this is going well. Really hope I don't blow it right towards close to the finish line. They're actually running in high heels as well. It's really strange. So what's really important here is that as a team, you have to agree on the outcomes and recommendations. So it's not enough to just go, yep, that worked. Here you go, product owner. go run with that. We need to actually figure out as a team, how successful was this sprint and how successful was this product? So what recommendations could we make for implementation or for next steps? Does it actually need to be iterated further? Did we not get as far enough? Or are we happy to move into an alpha or a beta and actually release it to some people to trial out? And most importantly as well, what does the business owner think of it? So you've had them within your sprint team so far, and it's important that you don't allow them to just dictate, yes, we like this, no, we don't like that. But what is really important is we want to make sure that the business owner accepts the recommendations and next steps that are being given. Because you don't want to hand over recommendations here and the product goes, right, I'm just going to shelf that and move on to the next thing. You need to make sure that they agree with it as well as the rest of your team. So that's the end of my process. 5 stages, 5 days. It is hard work to do it that way. And my one big kind of closing tip here is that it's really important that you work as a team and achieve a team, or sometimes you might actually fall as a team. Thank you.